A very good afternoon, and to some of you, a very good morning or good evening to everyone. My name is Yifan Jiang. I'm the Head of Science and Regulatory Affairs from Food Industry Asia. And really appreciate you dialing in today's call, which is the second episode that we have for the FIA Ingredient Innovation Series webinar. And today our discussion will be focused on the topic about clean label. Yeah, and I'm very happy to introduce to you on the two distinguished speakers that we have invited for today, who are Mr. Brian Nevin, who is the Senior Business Development Director on Applied Health and Nutrition from Kerry, APMEA region, and as well as Mr. Chit Liang Tan, who is the Product Line Innovation and Marketing Director on Texturizer and Specialties from Cargill in APAC region. Very welcome. Yeah. And to those of you who are on the call, for our discussion today, it will be in the panel discussion format. So meaning I will be moderating the session, asking the questions to the two panelists over here. I have prepared a few questions to get started with. And at the same time, I will welcome the participants on the call to submit your questions from the question box that is provided over here as well. So throughout the discussion, I can select the questions from the audience and put it forward to the panelists over here. Yeah, so I look forward to a fruitful discussion with both of you. And to start with, maybe I can let both of you to give us some introduction of what your company is about in terms of like how does it relate to the topic around clean label, and also what is your role in the company and your specialties when it comes to clean label topics. So let's start from Brian first.
Thank you, and good day to you all. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Brian Nevin. I'm a Senior Business Development Director within Kerry. I'm based in Thailand, in Bangkok, and I'm looking after business development for our food protection and preservation portfolio across the APMEA region. Now, Kerry is a leading taste and nutrition company. And our pledge is to be our customers' most valued partner in creating a world of sustainable nutrition. And clean label is a big part of that. You know, as we launch our Beyond the Horizon strategy, and as we move down our strategy commitment, moving into the future, you know, clean label will play a big part. Whether that's, you know, specifically in my space around food and beverage preservation, or whether that's in things like salt reduction, sugar reduction, and removal of additives from common foods and beverages you see today. So Kerry's vision, you know, is very much around sustainability and providing sustainable solutions to our customers, and I think clean label will play a big part of that. Okay.
Thank you, Brian, for your introduction. Yeah, let's move on to Chit Liang.
Hi, Yifan. Hi, Brian. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with you. So my name is Chit Liang. I am the Product Line Innovation and Marketing Director for Cargill's Starches, Sweeteners, and Texturizer business in Asia. I'm based in Singapore, and I lead the product line marketing and pricing teams to drive growth through product development, innovation, and partnerships. A little bit more about Cargill. So, you know, with Cargill, we've been in this business, in the food ingredients business, for the past 155 years. We're in 70 countries, and you know what we've been doing, in this time is really helping farmers grow, connect them to the broader markets through our trading and commodities business. We're also continuously developing products that give consumers what they're seeking for, whether it's something healthier, something more nutritious, or something that's more food safe. And we're always helping our partners innovate and manage risks so that they can nourish the world. Yeah, so really our mission here is about nourishing the world. Yeah, and with respect to clean label, it's something that's very close to heart. in a lot of what we are trying to innovate today in Cargill, we're thinking about clean label. Yeah, consumers want something that's simpler, healthier, and so we're always looking at that trend, and letting us inform us on our decisions around what to innovate. Thanks, Ifan.
Yeah, thank you very much both for the initial introduction. Yeah, and now let me get into the actual questions and discussion. And in the meantime, welcome any questions that will come from the audience over here. So you can feel free to type in your questions in the question box or the chat box. We will be monitoring and addressing your question. So let me get started first. So could both of the experts over here help us, to first try to understand what exactly clean label means? Because currently we see that there is no kind of aligned understanding on like how clean label is actually being defined. Yeah, so how would both of you describe clean label? Is it really a thing, or is it more like a marketing ploy? Yeah, so let's go to Brian first.
Yeah, sure. Clean label is way more than a marketing ploy. For me, it's a term that's been established based on a clear consumer need. We're seeing clear call outs from consumers around the world. They're wanting foods and beverages which are free from artificial additives or have shorter ingredient declarations, or and ingredients that consumers recognize. And so I think the term clean label has come to try and describe a very clear consumer need in the food and beverage market. So in that respect, it doesn't have a clear definition, because that consumer need is evolving over time, evolving from region by region, and simply we are responding to that consumer need, and trying to and working to meet that consumer need in a very transparent way, but also trying to make sure that we're keeping up with that trend as it evolves around the region, etc. And I'll pass it over to Chick to see what Chick's opinion on this is.
Thanks, Brian. Yep. And for us at Cargill as well, we certainly believe, yes, clean label is a thing and not a marketing ploy. Just to add on to what Brian is saying, for us, clean label means slightly different things to different people, but holistically, it is about simplicity and clarity, right? It's about enabling trust in the products that we consume, whether it's a shorter ingredient list or kitchen ingredients that we can understand, or even healthy ingredients. Yeah. And yes, I think one of the reasons why you would raise that question, Ifan, is because we also see this, right? That clean label is not clearly defined because it's a broad and evolving and expanding industry term to describe product labels in a simpler and understandable way. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's broad, it's evolving, and we have to kind of keep up with how the consumers are thinking about it as we think about clean label.
Yeah, thank you very much for addressing that and clarifying with us on how we should best look at clean label. And to me, it seems like clean label is more like a phenomenon, whereby consumers is actually driving certain trends and their expectation on the food products. So it's not only about having the terms that is easily recognizable to the consumers, but it could also involve other consideration around like how does it relate to our overall health. Yeah, and sustainability is something that you mentioned as well. And also good point about how it's also a kind of evolving trend that we need to look at and constant review, in that kind of consumers driven trend. So talking about consumer and the trend, I know that Kerry sometime last year has conducted research that looks into the consumer's perception around clean label specifically, right? So Brian, could you actually share with the audience over here on what are the main takeaways from these consumer insights? What is that telling us?
Yeah, so in 2019 we did a study in the APMEA region, and we continue to do studies around the world to understand, around what consumers want, around, a clean label or consumer-friendly ingredients, and what does it really mean to consumers. I think one of the key call-outs from our 2019 study in Asia was around the importance of food safety and the link between clean label and food safety. Maybe that was a little bit surprising in how strongly that came out. A clear call out from consumers for removal of artificial additives and preservatives, and a culture or a thought process that a lot of these additives and additives can actually be bad for people's health. So it's a drive for healthier foods. And a drive for cleaner label or more consumer friendly foods, all within the context of food safety. Okay, and I think that comes a little bit from some of the let's say some of the issues or some of the high profile issues we've had over the years around food scandals in the region, and customers wanting to feel that when they go and buy a product, it's safe to eat. It doesn't contain ingredients that are going to be harmful to the consumer. It's going to be safe until the end of shelf life without risk of infection from pathogens, etc. So that was a very big call out from us, that real, food safety has to be top of people's minds, and people are seeing that as the reduction or elimination of artificial ingredients as part of that drive towards safer foods.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. Interesting perspective, definitely, to look at the consumers in the APMEA region that is more actually concerned about still the fundamental food safety consideration when it comes to clean label, because we keep hearing from the insights from a lot of like relevant research that is also like targeting towards certain consumers' willingness in terms of looking into like the overall well-being and the sustainability kind of issue. But if we look back specifically in our region, food safety probably is still the fundamental. Yeah, and that is quite interesting insights to what challenge our thought as well. Yeah, and Chilean, is there any like similar activity that Cargill is conducting, or that you are aware of in terms of the kind of like efforts that industry is putting into in understanding the consumer trend? And is that something that you also feel like similarity with what Brian has shared?
Yeah, we certainly see it in the same way, Ifan. Let me expand on that. So through our own observations with our customers in Asia and globally, and also through our own research, we are seeing that more and more Asian consumers are becoming aware of and attuned to the consequences of the food choices they're making, right? And they're paying more attention to food labels. What's driving that? Really, it's about eating healthier and trying to attain longer term health, and also calling out food safety. Yeah, so food safety does rank up there. It's the top 3 reasons why consumers are turning over the label and starting to read it and trying to base their purchasing decisions on the label itself. I think the other insight here that we see is that clean label has what we see as several stages. Yeah, at the most basic stage, where I think where most Asian countries are at, it's really about natural, no preservatives, and you see a lot of that in the shelves that we in the shelves in Malaysia or Singapore or the Philippines. Yeah, we see if any customer is looking at making a food product, they're positioning or claiming that way. As we look forward to the more advanced regions, right, like the US or the Western countries like US and Europe, we're also starting to see clean label evolve into things like declaring non-GMO, right, or declaring minimally processed. Yeah, and The third stage of that is really around shorter ingredient labels, plant-based ingredients, and in certain categories that are very advanced with clean label. It could also mean animal welfare, traceability, sustainably sourced ingredients. So it does have a broad meaning, and the complexity, I would say, here is that different regions move at different speeds here. Yeah, and in Asia, we're right at the start of this. That's what we see today.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's it. You raised some great points there, Chick, and I think clean label is possibly a bit of a misleading term, and we prefer to think about consumer friendly rather than clean label, because that's what we're really working towards here, is producing foods and beverages that the consumers really want, consumers are asking for, and creating those new generations of foods and beverages that consumers are asking for means that we have to innovate and use our creative minds as food scientists to make that happen. So there's some great challenges in the industry right now that we're all trying to look at. But I think we're kind of looking at it as more of a consumer friendly movement rather than a clean label movement. Because it's not just about cleaning labels; it's much more than that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, both. Yeah, and that are also very good insights for us to look at how we are also trying to see how this can be reframed. Yeah, to actually help us to better communicate with the consumers to make our messaging a bit more like consumer friendly in the way you addressed. Yeah. And there is a question from the audience that is actually asking, like, if you zoom in into the Asia region, and just now, Chilang, you mentioned that we are still probably still catching up in terms of the overall trend, the consumer trend. But do you start to find any kind of nuances between the Asian countries in this space? For example, do you see any differences between countries like Singapore, Thailand, Japan, China, things like that? Is there any countries that is driving the trend as well?
Yeah, I would say the spectrum is wide. Yeah, in our view, Cargill, well, we call it Asia, but there's really no one Asia. Each of these countries run at their own speeds. When it comes to clean label, we think that we're seeing that in Australia and New Zealand, yeah, things are picking up much faster there, right? Trends around clean label are picking up. We're seeing increasing demand from our customers, looking more for reformulations in this space. Yeah. Surprisingly, we are also seeing that in certain categories within China as well, right? China it's a big innovator and a mover here, and so we're seeing a lot of movement here on clean label in China, as well as in Japan and in the more advanced countries. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we see today. We also traditionally see, for example, in certain categories where there's a lot of production in Asia, but it goes out to exported to Europe. Right? For example, meat in Thailand. So we also see quite a bit of clean label going on there, right, in terms of a clean label trend.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chilang. Good to see the kind of how do we actually also differentiate among the different Asian markets. Yeah, and the next question I can probably address it to Brian. This is another question from the audience that is asking, do you think that the clean label will also actually drive up the food prices? Yeah, does industry actually see this kind of a thing that they can actually help the industry to put up a premium on the food prices? Does clean label food products necessarily need to be more expensive? Yeah, what's your view on that?
I think it's a great question, and I think it's one of our great challenges in terms of how do we deliver value to consumers. What we see consistently is where we have that drive from consumers towards more consumer-friendly labels, and we can reposition food products on the shelves, then those products can command a premium in the marketplace because they're delivering, a specific customer need, and they can occupy a more premium space, and consumers will pay for that. But actually, what we're doing constantly is understanding how we deliver value. And in the context of where I'm at in food preservation, that something like extending the shelf life of a product can really drive value. So we tend to combine things to add value. So if we can move to a consumer-friendly label at the same time deliver extra days where that food is good to eat, that will mean that product can stay on the shelf longer in the retail space. It can stay in the customer's or consumer's refrigerator for longer. There's a longer time to eat that food or beverage. So we're adding value to the food chain, and from our point of view, working to reduce food waste, which is a massive concern for the food industry now and into years to come. So when working with let's say more natural ingredients like natural preservatives, it can on a cost per kilo basis, let's say, increase cost. We work in different ways to deliver value to the consumer. Okay, whether it's premiumization of the final product or adding value through shelf life extension. It's very important that whatever we do, we add value to customer and consumer.
Yep, I'll just add on to what Brian said, Ifan. I think in our research we're finding that yes, there is a trend towards clean label, more label friendly, but it's never at the expense of taste, yeah, or to a certain extent even cost, yeah, and that's why Brian alluded to adding value to it. And so I think we believe that generally the clean label trend will be kind of like a journey, and more like a progressive journey where our customers, food manufacturers are changing products step by step in small steps, yeah, because sudden changes in ingredients might negatively affect product performance and negatively affect their brands, right? They may not, and sudden changes in cost as well may be a big surprise for the consumers. So we see many customers taking a step-by-step approach as they go through this, right? They work on the top of the label first, yeah, and then they progress from there to the bottom of the label, yeah, as they kind of move in this direction.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. So you're talking about the kind of like step-by-step process that you have to bring forward in designing your product offering and bringing the consumers on board, right? So if we are looking into like what do we foresee in terms of the future direction on the innovation is going to, are you able to tell us like how would you actually predict the kind of innovation trend in this space? Let's say in the next 3 or 5 time frame? Or do you think that things are changing too fast? We still are not able to predict like 3, 5 years down the line. Yeah, what's your take on that, Brian?
Yeah, I think we always have our crystal ball out, and we're always looking into the future. But I think the whole food and beverage industry is going through a huge change right now. You look at some of the big trends and the big challenges we have ahead of us. I'm thinking of things like moving to a more flexitarian diet, reduced meat potentially in the future reduced meat consumption, moving to dairy alternatives. Those kind of big trends, I think, will drive a lot of innovation for Kerry as a food ingredient company, and play into the clean label space at the same time. So we have many big challenges ahead of us, and I think building a more sustainable future, and producing products which perform as well but have minimal impact on the environment, and working towards more of a circular economy. I think are going to be the big ticket items as we move forward. And to Chick's earlier point, embracing that change with consumers at the same time as not sacrificing on the eating or the drinking experience. So we still have to make great tasting products, but also embrace some of these big changes that are going on right now in the food and beverage industry. And I think that'll keep us really busy, to be honest, for the next few years.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a great question, Ifan. I think it's pretty difficult predicting the future, but I think what's nice about the clean label trend is that we've got the Western economies, North America and Europe, to look at as a reference on how things have evolved. Because certainly on the clean label trend, they are a little bit more ahead of us. Does that mean that the Asian countries will always follow the same path? Not really, but we do have some kind of precedence here, right? As we look at what's happening in North America and Europe, we can see, right? We can see that certain ingredients are becoming more and more popular. Yeah, and so here at Cargill, we pay attention, we pay very close attention to ingredient reputation, right? We work with our customers to identify ingredients that have a rising reputation, yeah, or worsening reputation, and they provide them with inputs as we work with them on formulations. Yeah, at the same time, at the back of our minds as we, continue to innovate on products, whether we are thinking about, starches or pectin or lecithin, we're always thinking, how can we make it more natural, more healthy, and, more minimally processed? Yeah. And so, with our starches, we're moving from modified starches to cleaner label starches, where you could just put starches on the label, or even, calling it functional flours. Yeah. With Carrageenan today, we're working on Carrageenan, which eventually we want to be able to call out as seaweed powder on the label. And for me, that's very interesting. Yeah, because it's, when you ask consumers, they would love to consume seaweed powder, but they may not want to consume Carrageenan. So, we're working through that with our customers, and yeah, it's not easy to predict, but we're using our insights from our research as well as from our consumer insights team to gather this and be as granular as possible in these countries.
Yeah, I think just to add one more point to this as well, I think to innovate in the future, we're going to have to collaborate more as ingredient producers with customers, collaborate more with packaging suppliers. So all aspects of the food chain, we're going to have to collaborate to really solve some of the big issues that we need to solve moving forward. So I think collaboration will be absolutely key, or more key, as we try and innovate into the future.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate the kind of insights you have shared, and I absolutely agree with you on the last point about collaboration as the essential for us to actually move forward some of those areas that we need to address. For example, going back to what Brian, you have shared about the kind of current a big trend and a new wave that we're foreseeing for the next few years when it comes to how do we address the sustainability agenda. Yeah, and we know that the industry needs to fulfill certain sustainable development goal at a very high level. But along that kind of movement, how do we actually bring the consumers forward to come up with a certain alignment for us to achieve that together? Right? I think only through collaboration we can achieve that. And also this is not something between the industry and the consumers, but also sometimes it's about the government stakeholders, policymakers, and the regulators along the same line as well. Yeah. So we also hear a lot of like the regulatory agencies. They are interested to also understand more about how is the industry innovation trend and the consumer trend around those areas. So in relation to that, there is some questions that I also received from the audience related to like the kind of regulatory angle of this new innovation trend. So while we're working in the ingredient space, so when companies are developing novel ingredients to help fulfill certain like clean label kind of ingredient, more seen towards like natural, that kind of perception to the consumers. Do you find it's currently actually easy for companies to get those ingredients registered across the different regulatory authorities? Do you see any need also for us to address those issues?
I'm sorry, I lost you slightly there. So, Chick, did you get the question fully?
Not quite. Maybe the last part, Ifan, you could repeat the last part. That'd be great. I
Yeah,
think
let me
a
repeat.
go over.
Yeah, exactly, because there was an airplane flew over just now. So the question was that, so when that companies are putting forward a new ingredient to fulfill certain clean label needs, yeah, do you face any difficulties with the regulatory framework when it comes to new ingredient approval, or do you think the current legislative framework is sufficient for us to play that part?
Well, maybe I'll go first. Yeah, Brian.
Sure.
So with us at Cargill, we do see regulators playing a critical part of the ecosystem, and the regulation is there, is established to protect consumers, and in the case of labeling, it's really to provide clear, accurate, and fair information to consumers for them to make purchase decisions. So we recognize the role of regulators here to regulate and make sure that the ingredients are properly, I would say, conforming, yeah, to the right food safety standards, and properly labeled as well. And so in that role, we also recognize that it may take a little bit of time. They will always be slightly behind the the food manufacturers or the food ingredients, because ingredient producers, because naturally they have to wait for the introduction, and that would take time. So we see that it's a healthy ecosystem. There is a good collaboration, right? Obviously, different regulators in different countries in Asia move at different speeds. Yeah, but what's good is also we see them being influenced by each other. Yeah, we see that with the sugar taxes that have come over the past 3 years, right? It started from one country and started to roll to the other countries as well. So I think that working together with regulators is really important here.
Yeah, I totally agree. They play an absolutely essential role in this whole movement moving forward. I'll say one thing: it's extremely complex, right? Asia as a region, from a regulatory perspective, is very complex. Would I like to see harmonization across Asia from a regulatory perspective? Yeah, of course, but I'm not sure I'm going to be alive when that happens. So we have to work hard, in each and every region, and work with the regulatory bodies and within their regulatory frameworks. And that's and to Chick's point, that's an essential part of ensuring that we're delivering solutions that are safe for consumption, in the region according to the local regulation. So it's an essential part of what we do is working with regulators, and without them, without them, it would be the Wild West, right? So we absolutely need regulators in place to work with.
Yeah, thank you very much for that input. And actually, to me, as that personally, I also work in the regulatory field. I certainly resonate with your points as well. Yeah, I think we also need to manage the expectation from both the industry sector and the regulators sector as well. We certainly have to still need at a certain level, regulation has to follow the trend of the industry innovation. So that I feel is also about how the business community is also sharing these kind of insights to the regulators, so that they can be also aware of what are the new development, and it can also help them to respond a little bit faster. So having this kind of communication and collaboration is essential. Yeah, and that in some more advanced countries, we certainly have also seen the regulators start to actually approach the industry at the early stage, at the innovation process, to actually co-develop the regulatory framework around that. So these are certainly like a good movement that we can observe in the region. Yeah. So next, I would also like to hear about your views. Just now we talked about engagement with the government and with the regulators, and the kind of collaboration we can look at. And the other part of the stakeholders I want to talk about is about the consumers, which are essentially, actually, as you shared earlier, are the people driving the trend. Yeah, and there's also a need to actually actively communicate to them and respond to the consumers' need and ask around this area. And I know that on the individual companies basis, you guys are also actively rolling out this kind of consumer engagement and communication there. But do you think actually collectively there's also some effort that we can all collaborate together to look at how do we actually approach the consumers together to bring in the kind of education or awareness building or engagement?
I think I'll start this off, Chick. I think we can always work, and we always do strive to, like, let's say, dispel myths or simplify for consumers, and be, we definitely have to be transparent with consumers and build trust. So I think we can always improve on how we can communicate to consumers, how we build transparency into the food and beverage products that we manufacture, and how we simplify the foods and beverages we produce. Yeah, I think it's all around communication, and building trust, and building transparency, moving forward, and just simplifying things for consumers, to help educate them. So it's about us, helping as an ingredient producer, helping our customers communicate better with consumers, and I think regulation has a role to play there in terms of how we communicate benefits to consumers as well, especially around traceability, authenticity. So as we move into these different types of foods and beverages, make sure we communicate to customers so that we're building trust in the products that we produce.
Yeah, and also build onto that. Maybe Chilean, before you answer, I can add up a little bit, and this is also related to a new question coming from the floor. I think it's quite a good question for us to also discuss a little bit more in terms of the industry role in communicating to consumers, because in terms of this clean label trend, we also need to be aware of like the consumers that are driving force towards it. But actually, consumers, they may not at all times understand about the like food the expertise in the industry. So, for example, we know that a lot of consumers are pushing for natural and things like that. But to be realistic, right? How natural are we in terms of the entire food industry? And sometimes we still need to maintain certain like food additives and to provide that kind of function that we need. So how do we actually communicate these kind of like facts to the consumers to also like bring in the kind of education to them? Yeah, and what kind of role do you think the consumer communication can play over here? Yeah, maybe Chilia, you can add a bit more on that perspective.
Sure. Thanks, Ifan. Yeah, it's a great question. As we think about this topic, I think the first step here is, understanding the consumer. Yeah, and we're talking about 4.2 billion people in Asia, so it's never about interviewing each and every one of them. And so at Cargill, we're looking at leveraging artificial intelligence to kind of sieve out good consumer insights. Yeah, consumer insights around clean label or any other ongoing trend. Yeah, and so as we leverage on social media, restaurant menus, and bring it all together in big data analytics, we're able to gain insights about where the consumer is heading, say in Indonesia, right, in dairy, yeah, and what are their main drivers, right, and or how would they interpret natural, yeah, as a definition, or any other complication that might be there in the food industry today. So understanding that is I would say priority. Then we work closely with our customers, yeah, who basically face these consumers, yeah, the food manufacturers. And the food manufacturing customers are really good at branding and simplifying the message. And so we work with our customers, on helping them, giving them that insight. With that insight, our customers take it to the consumers, and gradually the consumers, through advertisements or through promotions, get a better understanding of this. Yeah. The other ways, obviously, is also working through other means of promotions, like through you know uh, ambassadors, yeah, that or people who are like bloggers or social media influencers, to help to, I would say, influence, yeah, the landscape. I'm reminded of, I think in the US, um, the reputation of Carrigan went downhill because of a social media influencer, yeah, and reports around that. So there's these incidences, and I think it's a negative example, but there can be positive examples here on how we can educate the consumers around this.
Yeah, that's an excellent point and examples about addressing the consumer's perception around that. And sometimes actually there is a gap that we observe between the consumer's understanding and the actual science and the actual fact. And there's actually a great space for us to also play on how do we address the kind of communication effort. Yeah, and we're now a little bit over time, but overall we have also achieved a very good discussion with the two speakers. I really appreciate your expertise and sharing with us on the trend and the insights around this topic. Yeah, and also thank you very much from the audience here for submitting a lot of questions to unfold our discussion for today as well. Yeah, and thank you very much. And I wish you a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.